Bishop Todd Hall just told his congregation that if they sow a $10,000 seed, they'll become multi-millionaires. Yes, you heard that right. $10,000 for a supposed guaranteed blessing. But the real question is, who's actually becoming the millionaire here? The people in the pews or the man behind the pulpit? Because what I found out about this so-called divine promise will leave you speechless. Stay right here, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about modern-day prosperity preaching. Now, before we dive deeper, let's set the stage. Bishop Todd Hall has long been known as one of the most charismatic and outspoken figures in the world of modern Pentecostal preaching. With his powerful voice, dramatic delivery, and commanding presence, he's built a reputation that stretches far beyond the church walls. But recently, a video clip surfaced that has everyone talking, and not in a good way. In that clip, Bishop Hall boldly declares that by sowing a seed of $10,000, you will become a multi-millionaire. The statement sent shockwaves across social media, sparking debates, outrage, and confusion. Some say he's simply preaching faith. Others believe it's a dangerous manipulation of people's hope and desperation. And that's what today's video is all about. We're going to break this situation down piece by piece, uncovering where this message comes from, how the prosperity gospel has evolved into a multi-million-dollar industry, and why this moment with Bishop Todd Hall is striking such a nerve right now. Because when a preacher promises wealth in exchange for faith, the question isn't just about money, it's about trust, influence, and spiritual responsibility. You won't believe what we uncovered about the history behind this message, the psychology of seed sowing, and the hidden cost of these so-called blessings. Stick around, because before this video ends, we're going to expose not only what Bishop Hall said, but what it really means for his followers, and for the future of the modern church. It all started with a short 30-second clip that spread like wildfire across TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. In the video, Bishop Todd Hall stands confidently on stage, microphone in hand, his voice thundering through the packed church. He's wearing one of his signature suits, the kind that glimmers under the stage lights as he paces back and forth across the platform. Then comes the moment that sent the internet into chaos. He looks out at the congregation and declares, "If you sow a seed of $10,000, you will become a multi-millionaire." The crowd cheers, shouts of "Amen" echo through the room, and the organ swells in the background. It's a scene straight out of the modern prosperity gospel playbook, emotional, high energy, and designed to make people believe that the supernatural is about to manifest right in front of them. But the internet wasn't cheering. Within hours, that same clip was being shared and reposted by critics and church commentators who called the statement manipulative, reckless, and exploitative. Some even labeled it spiritual abuse, accusing Hall of preying on vulnerable believers desperate for a financial breakthrough. On Twitter, threads popped up with captions like, "This is why people are leaving the church," and "Selling blessings for profit is not faith, it's fraud." Others defended Bishop Hall, arguing that his message was being taken out of context, that he wasn't literally selling miracles, but simply teaching the principle of faith-based giving. Still, the clip's reach continued to grow. By the end of the week, it had racked up over 1 million combined views across multiple platforms. Even popular religious YouTubers jumped into the conversation. Some broke down his sermon word by word, comparing it to past teachings from other controversial figures like Creflo Dollar, Benny Hinn, and Mike Murdoch, all known for their strong emphasis on seed faith. Others questioned why so many churches today continue to push financial sacrifice as a pathway to wealth when so few see the results promised from the pulpit. And here's where it gets interesting, because the outrage didn't just stay online. People who had once attended Bishop Hall's church began speaking out. A few shared stories of feeling pressured to give more than they could afford, while others described being told that their lack of financial blessing was proof their faith wasn't strong enough. The conversation quickly turned from one viral clip into a full-blown examination of how money and ministry often intersect in ways that make people deeply uncomfortable. But this is only the beginning, because the more you look into this moment, the more you realize that Bishop Hall's message didn't come out of nowhere. It's part of a long, controversial tradition that stretches back decades. And what you're about to hear next will help you understand how this sow a seed, reap a blessing mentality became one of the most profitable messages in church history. To really understand why Bishop Todd Hall's statement hit such a nerve, you have to go back, way back, to where the concept of sowing a seed even started, because the idea that faith and finances are connected didn't begin with him or even his generation. It was born out of a uniquely American blend of ambition, faith, and the promise of success that's been simmering for over a century. The story begins in the early 20th century with the rise of what was called the New Thought movement. It wasn't originally a church doctrine, but a philosophy built on the idea that your thoughts could shape your reality. If you think positively, speak positively, and believe deeply enough, you could literally attract wealth, health, and happiness into your life. This movement heavily influenced early Pentecostal preachers who took the idea of mental faith and connected it directly to spiritual power. Then came the 1940s and 50s, the golden age of radio and tent revivals. Evangelists like Oral Roberts began preaching that God wanted his people to prosper, not just spiritually, but financially. Roberts popularized the now famous phrase, seed faith. His teaching was simple but emotionally charged. If you give money to God's work, specifically through his ministry, God will multiply it and bless you abundantly in return. From there, the idea exploded. By the time television became mainstream, televangelists saw an opportunity like never before. The camera became the new pulpit, and the message of give and be blessed reached millions of living rooms across America. Preachers like Kenneth Copeland, Jim Bakker, and later Creflo Dollar and Benny Hinn took that seed faith message and turned it into an empire, complete with private jets, multi-million-dollar homes, and lavish lifestyles that they justified as evidence of God's favor. What made it so powerful and dangerous was how emotionally convincing it sounded. The prosperity gospel wasn't sold as greed. It was sold as faith. People were told that poverty was a curse, that lack meant their faith was weak, and that wealth was the visible proof that God's hand was on your life. The message gave hope to millions who were struggling, hope that maybe if they just gave one more time or sacrificed a little more, their miracle would finally come. Fast forward to today, and you can see the remnants of that teaching in nearly every major charismatic church. The language might be more polished now, the production more modern, but the core message is the same. Give to receive. And that's exactly the script Bishop Todd Hall stepped into when he told his congregation that sowing a $10,000 seed could make them multi-millionaires. He wasn't inventing something new. He was repeating a formula that has been proven to emotionally move crowds and open wallets. But here's the crucial difference. In a world where social media exposes everything, people are no longer accepting these claims without evidence. They're asking harder questions. If seed sowing truly works, why are so many givers still struggling while the preachers keep getting richer? And that's where the controversy deepens. Because behind the sermons, behind the shouting and the organ music, there's an entire system built to protect the image of prosperity while concealing the financial realities that make it all possible. So before we judge the clip or the man behind it, we have to look at what's really happening behind the curtain, how the machinery of modern-day ministry keeps this message alive and profitable. And trust me, once you see the numbers, you'll understand why so many pastors keep preaching about money and why the promise of seed faith never seems to go away. Now that we've explored where the prosperity gospel began, let's pull back the curtain on how it truly operates in today's world. Because make no mistake, faith has become a highly profitable business, and Bishop Todd Hall's $10,000 seed appeal fits perfectly into that financial system. To understand how it works, picture a typical high-energy church service. The music is loud, the atmosphere electric, and emotions are running high. When Bishop Hall or any prosperity preacher walks onto that stage, they're not just delivering a sermon. They're performing a carefully structured psychological experience. Every story, every shout, every verse is designed to lead to one pivotal moment, the offering call. That's when the language changes. Suddenly, it's no longer about the message of hope or salvation. It's about an opportunity. The pastor says something like, "This is your moment to activate your miracle," or "Don't miss your season of breakthrough." The crowd feels that surge of faith, that urgency, that fear of missing out. And that's when the seed is introduced. Sometimes it's $100, sometimes it's $1,000, but every once in a while, someone like Bishop Hall raises the stakes and says, "God told me there are people here who can sow $10,000. When that number is spoken, the room shifts. For some, it's an impossible ask. For others, it's a test of devotion. And for the preacher, it's strategy. Because in the world of faith-based fundraising, big numbers create big responses, both emotional and financial. The truth is, many of these ministries operate with the efficiency of a corporate brand. Behind the scenes are marketing teams, donation management systems, email campaigns, and social media departments, all working together to convert spiritual followers into financial contributors. The message of sowing a seed is no longer just a biblical metaphor. It's a business model built on repetition, emotional engagement, and strategic storytelling. Let's break it down in plain numbers. Suppose even 10 people respond to a $10,000 seed call. That's $100,000 collected in a single service. If that happens once a month, that's over $1 million in a year from high-tier donors alone. And that's before counting smaller offerings, online donations, and event ticket sales. Add in book deals, merchandise, and conference fees, and you begin to see just how lucrative this faith formula can be. Now, here's where things get complicated. Most of these churches are registered as nonprofits, meaning they are exempt from many taxes. Their financial disclosures, if any, are often limited. That makes it incredibly hard for the public to know exactly where the money goes. Some of it, of course, supports legitimate church operations, community programs, and salaries. But in many cases, large portions fund luxury lifestyles, designer suits, expensive cars, and multi-million-dollar homes, all defended under the claim of God's blessing. Critics argue that this system preys on hope, particularly among people struggling financially. They point out that while the congregation sacrifices from a place of faith, the leaders benefit from a place of privilege. It's a painful contradiction. The people who give the most often have the least to spare, yet they are made to feel that withholding is a sign of disobedience to God. When Bishop Todd Hall told his audience to sow a $10,000 seed for millionaire blessings, he wasn't just making a spiritual statement. He was engaging a long-standing emotional and economic cycle that keeps these ministries thriving. The more outrageous the promise, the more viral the message, and the more attention, donations, and influence follow. But here's the twist most people don't see. It's not only the preachers who are invested in keeping this system alive. Many churchgoers have internalized this teaching so deeply that questioning it feels like questioning God himself. That's the brilliance and the danger of prosperity preaching. It blurs the line between faith and finance until they're nearly indistinguishable. Still, as powerful as this system is, cracks are starting to show. Former members, ex-pastors, and even some insiders are beginning to speak out, revealing the emotional and financial toll this culture has taken. And what they've shared about how seed sowing really works behind closed doors might just change how you see the entire movement. Behind every dollar dropped into an offering plate, behind every shouted amen or tearful hallelujah, there's a story, and not all of them end with a miracle. For many who once believed in the promise of seed sowing, the experience has left them broke, heartbroken, and spiritually disillusioned. When the clip of Bishop Todd Hall began circulating online, it didn't just spark debates, it opened old wounds. Comment sections filled up with testimonies from people who said they'd been there before. They'd heard the same message, made the same sacrifices, and waited for the same miracle that never came. Take, for example, Michelle, a single mother from Florida who shared her story in a viral Facebook post. She said that during a revival service years ago, she was told to sow her best seed if she wanted God to bless her business. The preacher said, "God told me someone in this room has $5,000 in their account. If you release it tonight, you'll see breakthrough before the year ends." Michelle hesitated, but the room's energy, the music, and the pastor's intensity made her feel that if she didn't give, she was standing in the way of her own blessing. So she gave, she waited. A year passed, her business didn't grow, her bills did, and she said that was the night she learned how easy it is to confuse manipulation with faith. Stories like Michelle's are everywhere. On TikTok, former church members have started entire pages dedicated to exposing the emotional pressure they felt in prosperity churches. Many describe a cycle of giving and disappointment, a pattern that left them questioning whether God had failed them or whether they had failed God. Some even describe the shame of being told that their lack of financial success was proof their faith wasn't strong enough. It's a painful reality that few in the church want to talk about. Because in these circles, doubt is often treated like rebellion. When someone questions a message like Bishop Hall's, they're told, "You're not operating in faith," or "You're letting the enemy sow confusion." That kind of spiritual gaslighting keeps people silent. It convinces them that speaking out is a sign of weakness, when in truth, it's the first step toward freedom. And this isn't just about money, it's about trust. People give not only their cash, but their confidence, their emotions, their prayers. When the promised blessing doesn't arrive, it doesn't just hurt their bank account. It shakes their entire relationship with faith itself. One former member of a well-known prosperity church described it like this: "You start to believe that your worth is tied to your wallet. The more you give, the closer you think you are to God, but the less you have, the more unworthy you start to feel." This emotional dependence is one of the most powerful tools in the prosperity preacher's arsenal. When a leader like Bishop Todd Hall stands before a crowd and says, "Your harvest is waiting, you just have to sow," it's not just an invitation, it's a test of loyalty. The more people give, the more they prove their faith. And the more they give, the harder it becomes to walk away, because no one wants to admit they've been deceived. And yet, more and more people are finding the courage to speak out. YouTube channels, podcasts, and online forums are becoming safe spaces for ex-members to tell their stories, without fear of being labeled rebellious or cursed. They're revealing how the pressure to sow sacrificial seeds often leads to maxed out credit cards, broken relationships, and even mental health struggles. In one heartbreaking story shared on a Christian watchdog channel, a woman explained how her father sold his car to sow a $10,000 seed after hearing a preacher promise a sevenfold return. He truly believed God would reward his sacrifice with a new business opportunity. But a year later, he was unemployed and struggling with depression, feeling like he had somehow failed God. The tragedy wasn't just financial, it was spiritual. That's the human cost of the prosperity gospel. It takes genuine faith, something beautiful and sacred, and turns it into a transaction. It convinces people that divine favor can be purchased like a product. And when the product doesn't deliver, people don't blame the preacher, they blame themselves. This is what makes the Bishop Todd Hall controversy so important. It's not just about one man's statement, it's about a pattern that has repeated for decades, affecting thousands of believers across generations. Every time a pastor promises instant wealth in exchange for money, they're tapping into a system that has left countless lives quietly devastated. But here's where the story takes another turn, because not everyone is staying silent anymore. Some pastors, theologians, and former insiders are now speaking up against this message from within the church itself. They're challenging the prosperity gospel from the pulpit, calling for transparency, accountability, and a return to what they say is the true meaning of faith.